Good morning, Internet. How are you today? It's not Friday, but, I just decided to do a quick video. It's early for me, and I haven't had my coffee. I want to talk about my observation in loops. Now, I feel that people with narcissistic personality disorder, no matter how successful or unsuccessful they are, operate in 3 loops. Hear me out. These moments in time that narcissistic people operate in, right, to help them cope with their lives. This is just an observation. This isn't clinical, obviously. But I've noticed this with every single narcissist that I've come in contact with, especially those who come back. They seem to be operating on this 3-tier level of time that, involves, I guess, their coping. So the first loop, the first kind of segment of time that drives them is, of course, their trauma. The shame, the guilt, all this other stuff, the thing that made them a narcissist in the first place. That's the core, right? That's what they know deep down something is wrong with them. But they chalk it up to like having a bad childhood, abuse, whatever. But it's this trauma that keeps them going, right? It's this trauma that, I guess, starts to build the narcissistic personality. I say this is because a family member that I know has no problem using the guilt factor when cornered, and they always go back to this trauma. Like, this trauma is always in their back pocket, and they use it, believe it or not. They use it to garner favor. They use it for guilt. They use it for whatever they can use for. They basically weaponize this loop, right? Instead of getting help for it, they use it against you, right? But this is the basis of what makes them them. The second loop, segment of time that I noticed they revel in is the time when they had the most power and everyone saw that they were amazing. Believe it or not, every single narcissist, in my opinion, had this moment of time where everybody loved them. It could have been brief, it could have been long, but they had this moment where everyone could see the mask and they thought the mask was real. And thus, it gave them the supply, like this crack cocaine level of supply, that they had everyone fooled, right? They could be a celebrity. They could be a scholar. They could be a teacher. But it was always this one moment in time where everyone loved them. And that's what they're running for. That's what they're always trying to reach for, to that point where they can have that high, that extraordinary high, where everyone loved them and adored them and didn't see the previous loop, the trauma, the shame, the guilt, all that good stuff. Think about it. Every narcissist is not good at everything. Like, they're not a jack of all trades. They're always trying to perfect one thing, right? One thing that makes them shine. Everything else doesn't matter. But if they can do that one thing, then, it's like, I can do this one thing and I know I can get glory for this one thing, right? I won't name any names, but just think about the narcissistic people in your life. Are they super beautiful? Are they super smart? Are they a manager or CEO of a company? Remember, narcissistic people only do things where they can get supply. It's very rarely that a narcissistic person is going to be isolated in their own bubble. It'll kill them, right? The supply is like air. The supply is like food. The supply is like water. They need it. And so they need someone to validate them. Even if it's for free, they need someone to validate them. The third loop or segment of time I've noticed is that moment where they had complete control over the supply that they deemed the best, aka you. Now, let's just be real, right? At least I'll be real. There was a time where the narcissistic people in my life, I worshiped them. I loved them. I thought that they were the best thing since white sliced bread because I didn't see the monster behind the mask, right? And so when a narcissistic person has this supply that is just so amazing and so stupid, because I will admit that I was completely and utterly stupid, that's like the best time for them because you're basically liquid gold on tap. Nothing they do is wrong. They don't have to search for the grandiose power and like the second segment. They can always just get that from you, right? And they think that, you will always be in that loop of time, right? That's what makes narcissistic people come back. Now, you may say, well, what brought this on? And this and this and this. Because I do have, I have an observation from even the previous week that I thought was very interesting. It was the narcissistic person that I basically shoved out of my life and didn't come back, and the narcissistic person who was trying to come back, right? These are both men in my life. Now, the first, who has not come back, his flying monkeys have, though, but he hasn't. It's because he was outed. He was outed in a public sense that everyone in our circle, our mutual circle, knew what he's done, because I am not like one of those empaths who kind of shirk. I just told it like it is. Like, these are the facts. The person who you think you are friends with, he was completely different behind closed doors, and I will not be shamed into silence. This is who this person is, and if you choose to be friends with him, you can no longer be friends with me. I'm sorry to give you an ultimatum. But this is how it is, and I'm not going to accept your we can be friends mutually behavior. You must choose sides because what he did was so heinous. It's unforgivable. Now, when you tell people the truth around you, especially if the smear campaign happens and they know your character, that person, that narcissistic person is not going to come back. I can test this because not only did you cut off your supply, but you cut off their supply too. You cut off the friends, the family, the mutual thing. Like, you cut them off. You basically tap them out. And so, since they know that you won't accept them back, and they know that the people around you, mutual friends, family, whatever, know the truth, they have too much pride to come back and explain themselves, right? Because it's going to take a lot of responsibility, a lot of trauma that they're going to have to dig back up, and they don't want to do that, right? But then there's the narcissistic person who's delusional. I actually saw this gentleman a couple of days ago, and I haven't spoken to him for a year, right? And it's been intentional. Now, granted, yeah, we do kind of work in the same circles, but I made it very, very clear that I'm done with you. But in his mind, there was a time where I did adore him, right? And so he went completely back to that time thinking that if he did the same smile, if he did the same body gestures, if he gave the same jokes, I would fall back into line, right? It's that future faking, whatever they call it. He was very surprised when I looked him dead in the eyes, looked him up and down, and walked past him like he didn't exist. Very surprised. And he didn't say anything, but he still tried to talk. And I literally looked through him like he was a wall, right? I looked, I guess, through him, past him, to him, and it shook him, because in that loop of complete control, he still thought he had power, right? The beautiful thing about these loops with narcissistic people is that you must realize, summed up, that they don't change. They're still living in the past. They're still living in grandeur. They're still living in this world that has marched on years and years and years ago. And you can change, right? Because if you go through enough grief and enough trauma, you'll have to change, because you'll always be a victim, right? But if you decide to kind of, get a grip and understand that you've been played, you'll change and you'll see. And narcissistic people, a majority of them, don't want you to see and don't think you have the intelligence to see, because deep down inside, they don't see, and they don't leave their loops of time where they were the best. So I hope that helps. As I said before, I saw this previously. Like, this happened recently, with one person's flying monkeys kind of floating around, and another person trying to rekindle what was, but will never be. And since I've come to a point now where I'm a very even keel and very observant instead of emotional, I find it hilarious that these people exist, and they still exist in this time frame that doesn't serve them or anyone else. Well, have a good day, Internet.